A human soldier saved the alien queen's daughter and was rewarded beyond belief. Elias Vance remembered the exact moment his life went sideways. Not when the salvage craft exploded around him, leaving him floating in the void with shredded comms and a screaming pain in his leg, but when the impossible green light pulsed around his dying form and pulled him into something vast, warm, and utterly alien. He woke in a chamber that felt more grown than built, bathed in soft bioluminescent light, filtering down from crystalline structures high above. The air was thick with the scent of mineral and something like ozone. Pain was a dull throb now, expertly mitigated. And then he saw them. Not just the beings who moved with fluid grace on too many limbs, their forms encased in shimmering, segmented carapaces that shifted hue with subtle emotional cues. But she stood slightly apart. Taller, her carapace a deep, resonant violet that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. Her head, sleek and tapered, turned towards him. He couldn't see eyes in the conventional sense, but he felt the intense focus of her awareness. Her voice, when she spoke, resonated directly inside his skull, a low, melodic hum, carrying precise, formal thought forms. "You are the one who interfered." Elias, still groggy, managed a wry grin that felt alien on his face. Interfered, more like, got shipwrecked and happened to be in the neighborhood when things got sporty. He tried to push himself up, wincing. His standard issue boots were gone, replaced by a cool, yielding surface beneath his feet. "Look, no offense, but where the hell am I and who are you folks? And what was that green light?" The violet carapaced alien tilted her head, the movement conveying a complex mix of curiosity and impatience. "You are within the deep structures of the Cathar homeworld. In the healing creche, the green light was a resonance field, applied to preserve vital function in a compromised organic form. I am Commander Lyra, of the Royal Guard First Cohort. You intervened during an attempted abduction of the Queen's youngest daughter. Her proximity to the resonance field during the incident allowed your survival when your vessel failed." Elias's fuzzy memory sharpened. He'd been exploring a derelict freighter, rumored to hold advanced Cathar tech, when alarms blared and smaller, faster craft, aggressive and dark, had latched onto a section of the derelict. He'd been in the wrong place at the right time, or vice versa. He'd seen figures struggling, one small iridescent form being dragged away. Adrenaline had kicked in. Old habits die hard. He'd rigged a plasma conduit to blow in a localized burst, hoping to create a distraction. It seems he'd done more than distract. Attempted abduction? By who? What was she doing on a wreck? Matters of Cathar security and royal movement are not for external discussion. Lyra stated, her tone firm. The matter is that your action, while reckless and unauthorized, disrupted the aggressors. They were of the Obsidian Hand bloodline, who seek to violate the ancient compact. The princess, though unharmed, was in peril. Your spontaneous intervention was noted. She paused, a flicker of something unreadable passing across her form. The Queen requests your presence. Your fate must be determined according to the protocols of accidental intersection and beneficial uninvited action. My fate? Elias felt a prickle of unease. Look, I just blew up a small part of a derelict. Didn't mean to step on any inter-bloodline squabbles. Just patch me up and point me to a comm station. I need to signal for pickup. Lyra's form remained still, but her internal voice carried a note of cold finality. Signal is not possible within the deep structures, and protocols must be observed. Your action, minor to you, has vast implications here. It disrupted the Obsidian Hand's agenda in a crucial moment. It also entangled you, an outsider, within the heart resonance of the royal line during a time of crisis. This is unprecedented. Come. The Queen awaits. She gestured with a multi-jointed limb towards an opening in the chamber wall. Elias, finding his leg, felt stable, though still numb, pushed himself to his feet. He was definitely in over his head. His reward, it seemed, was about to be revealed, and he had a feeling it wasn't going to be a medal. The journey through the Cathar structures was disorienting. They moved through vast caverns, illuminated by arrays of glowing crystals, across bridges woven from living matter, and past chambers where Cathar of various carapaced forms went about their tasks. Lyra moved with purpose, her posture radiating authority. Other Cathar cleared a path, their own luminescence dimming slightly in deference. Elias, limping slightly despite the healing, felt acutely aware of his awkward bipedal form in plain, salvaged clothes among these elegant alien beings. So, started, breaking the silence, protocols of accidental intersection. Sounds bureaucratic. Any chance it involves paperwork and a shuttle ride home? Lyra's mental voice was devoid of humor. Protocols are the foundation of our society, Elder Vance. They maintain balance and order, especially in matters concerning the bloodlines and the resonance. Accidental intersection requires assessment of the outsider's intent and contamination level. Beneficial, uninvited action complicates this. It mandates a measure of compensation or integration, depending on the nature of the benefit and the status of the outsider. Contamination level, integration. Elias stopped, his gut twisting. Hold on, is this about, like, biological stuff? Am I carrying space cooties? Not solely biological, Lyra replied, pausing to let him catch up. Resonance contamination. Your presence within the active resonance field, particularly during a moment of high stress for the royal line, means your own resonance signature is now entangled. This is not a simple matter of illness. It affects connectivity, compatibility, especially regarding the pulse. The pulse, Elias was thoroughly lost. What's the pulse? The Cathar pulse is our shared consciousness, our historical record, our emotional collective, Lyra explained, her voice taking on a slightly more complex timbre. It is accessed through deep resonance, often requiring physical or mental union. The royal line and certain bonded pairs act as conduits and custodians of the pulse. Your unexpected entanglement, particularly with the princess's fragile young resonance, is disruptive. It creates noise. She resumed walking, leaving Elias to process this. Shared consciousness, entangled resonance. This was light years beyond anything he'd learned about xenopsychology or biology. They reached a chamber that dwarfed all others. At its center sat a figure whose carapace was the color of molten gold, radiating a calm, ancient power. This was the queen. Around her stood figures in varying carapaces, guards, advisors, possibly other members of the royal line. One, in a dark, jagged carapace, pulsed with a subtle, aggressive light. The obsidian hand, perhaps. Elias felt a surge of discomfort. Lyra led him forward, stopping several lengths away from the queen. Lyra lowered her upper torso in a gesture Elias assumed was a bow. Your Majesty, the outsider, Elder Elias Vance. The queen's mental voice was softer than Lyra's but carried immense authority. Approach Elias Vance. You saved my child, though you knew not the cost or consequence. A debt was formed. Now the protocols demand balancing. The obsidian hand claim your entanglement is a deliberate act of sabotage, a foreign resonance meant to disrupt our sacred pulse. A ripple of assent came from the dark carapaced figure. They demand your excision, a painful, permanent severing of the resonance. Elias felt a cold dread crawl up his spine. Excision? Sound unpleasant. Your Majesty, I swear. It was an accident. I was just trying to stop those guys, whoever they were. Your intent is noted and chaotic, but not malicious, the queen said. However, your resonance is intertwined. Simple severing is dangerous. It could harm the princess. It could ripple through the pulse. There is another protocol, rarely invoked. The protocol of harmonic integration. If the foreign resonance cannot be purged, it must be harmonized. Bound to a stable, strong Cathar resonance. One capable of containing and guiding yours. Her gaze, which Elias now realized was a gentle internal glow, visible behind a semi-transparent membrane, settled on Lyra. Lyra stood rigidly, her violet carapace darkening slightly. Commander Lyra's resonance is strong, disciplined, and untethered. By the ancient laws, if she accepts, she can absorb your resonance, bind it to her own, and thus integrate you into the Cathar harmony. This requires deep and permanent union, a ritual binding, a mating in the human sense. Elias's mind reeled. Mating? With an alien? To avoid getting capsized? Whoa, 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 he stammered. Made like forever? Like joining your pulse thingy? Forever is the nature of the bond, Lyra stated, her voice flat. If the ritual of harmonic integration is performed, our resonances will be permanently twined. Your consciousness will have a conduit to the pulse. Though filtered through my own, your physical form would be sustained and harmonized by the bond. You would become bound to me and to the Cath. The dark carapace Cathar spoke, their voice a grating scrape inside Elias's head. She has no choice, your majesty. Her lineage is sworn to uphold the harmonic protocols. She is untethered of the correct caste for this duty. It is law. Lyra remained silent, her form radiating a tense stillness. The queen addressed Lyra. Commander, the protocol allows refusal only if the untethered is already bound or infirm. Neither apply. The decision rests on your willingness. Will you accept this charge? To bind the outsider, Elder Elias Vance, and integrate his resonance into the pulse. Becoming his pair, Elias looked at Lyra, searching for any sign of emotion in her alien form. He saw none, just that same rigid posture, the dark violet carapace. This was insane. He'd saved a kid, and now he was being offered as a prize? A biological anchor. His dry humor kicked in, a desperate defense. So, let me get this straight. My options are painful, permanent severing, or marrying the commander here and joining your giant space brain. Lyra's mental voice addressed the queen, ignoring Elias completely. Your Majesty, my life is dedicated to the guard and the protection of the royal line. To become bound, it necessitates shifting focus. A pair has duties. A bond requires presence. Her voice was measured, devoid of personal feeling. However, the safety of the princess and the stability of the pulse are paramount. If the outsider's resonance poses a genuine threat that only integration can resolve. She paused, and Elias felt a wave of something cold and sharp from her, not directed at him, but inward. Grief, resignation. Then I will perform my duty. I accept the charge. A murmur went through the chamber. The dark carapaced Cathar pulsed with what felt like frustrated energy. The queen's glow softened slightly. So be it. The ritual of harmonic integration will be prepared. It must be performed within the next 3 cycles to ensure the resonance entanglement does not deepen unchecked. Commander Lyra, you will escort the outsider. Instruct him on the nature of the bond and the requirements of the ritual. His survival and successful integration are now your responsibility. His presence cannot disrupt the balance of the Cathar. Lyra bowed again, a precise, formal move, as the queen commands. She then turned to Elias, her form still radiating that controlled, almost brittle energy. Come, Elder Vance. You have much to learn, and little time. Elias, still reeling from the sudden, drastic turn of events, could only nod numbly. He followed her out of the queen's chamber, the weight of his unexpected reward settling heavily on him. Marriage? With an alien he couldn't even read? Just because he'd accidentally saved her princess? This was definitely beyond belief. Lyra led him through more winding passages, the silence between them thick with unspoken tension. Elias finally broke it. Okay, Commander. Much to learn, little time. Lay it on me. What exactly does harmonic integration involve? Besides the obvious marital implications, Lyra stopped in a less frequented corridor, the bioluminescent light here dimmer, casting long, strange shadows. It is not marital in your human sense, Elder Vance. While it involves physical and resonant union, its primary purpose is the stable binding of 2 distinct resonance signatures. Think of it as forging a single, harmonious frequency from 2 disparate ones. My resonance will become the dominant carrier wave. Your own a subordinate frequency that vibrates in sync. If successful, your presence will no longer disrupt the pulse. Instead, it will add a unique note, filtered through my own connection. And if it's not successful? Elias asked, his voice low. Lyra's carapace pulsed with a fleeting, dark shade. Failure. Resonant disharmony. At best, it causes significant disruption to the pulse, potentially endangering those deeply connected, like the princess. At worst, it can result in the severing of both resonances, a violent expulsion from the network, and potentially non-viability for the failed pair. Non-viability. Elias swallowed hard, meaning I die. You die, meaning, Lyra corrected, her tone grim, that our life energies, now entwined, would be catastrophically disrupted. Physical death would be a likely outcome. Therefore, failure is not an option. Great, Elias muttered, running a hand through his short hair. So, no pressure. Just the fate of your society's mental internet and our lives on the line. He looked at her, trying to grasp the reality of it. Why you, Commander? The Queen said you were untethered. What does that mean? Lyra's form stiffened further. It means I am not bound. My former pair perished in a skirmish cycles ago. The protocol of harmonic integration requires an untethered cathar of a specific resonant capabilities, and my lineage carries the necessary markers for deep pulse interaction. It also requires a cathar with no existing resonant obligations that would conflict with integrating an outsider signature. My status fulfills these criteria. Her voice was clipped, revealing nothing of the implied loss. Elias felt a flicker of unexpected empathy. He knew loss. He knew the ache of a missing partner, even if theirs hadn't been resonant. I'm sorry about your pair, he said quietly. It felt inadequate in the face of whatever alien bond she'd lost. Lyra's form remained unyielding. Sympathy is unnecessary, Elder Vance. Grief is a private matter and has no place in duty. We must prepare for the ritual. It takes place in the Chamber of Whispering Stone. It involves sensory immersion, controlled resonant merging, and the physical joining of conductive points. Conductive points? Elias felt his face heating up. This was going from bizarre, potentially very awkward. Lyra finally turned fully towards him, and he saw a subtle internal light pulse within her carapace. Almost like a sigh. Our carapaces have specific nodes. Yours, as a human, will likely require a tailored interface, woven from resonant filaments. The merging of resonances is facilitated by the physical connection of these nodes. It is intensely intimate. The pulse recognizes shared physical space and energetic exchange as a pathway. Intense and intimate, Elias repeated dryly. Right, just what every guy wants after a shipwreck. A forced, potentially fatal, alien marriage ceremony involved conductive points. He paused, looking at her again. Commander, Lyra, you said grief has no place in duty. But this is a huge thing. Your life, my life. Your people. Is there anything you want to know about me? About humans? Since we're apparently doing this deep resonance thing, Lyra was silent for a long moment, the only sound the faint hum of the structures around them. When she spoke, her mental voice was softer, almost hesitant. Your action. Saving the princess. You risked yourself for a stranger, an alien. Why? Elias shrugged, the movement feeling clumsy. Why? I don't. Saw someone in trouble. Had a way to help. It's what we do. What medics do. What decent people do, I guess. He looked away, remembering other moments, other times he'd tried to help and failed. The old wound ached. Guess I'm wired that way. Or maybe just dumb. Not dumb, Lyra said, and this time Elias detected a faint ripple across her carapace, a fleeting visual equivalent of a frown. Reckless, perhaps. Impulsive. But without merit. She resumed walking. We must move. I will guide you through the necessary preparations. You will be cleansed physically and resonantly. You will be instructed on maintaining a stable internal state during the ritual. Your human physiology is resilient, but chaotic. We must impose order. Elias followed, a million questions still swirling in his head. Cleansed? Ordered? This was going to be a long 3 cycles. He had a feeling that his chaotic human nature and Lyra's rigid Cathar discipline were about to clash in spectacular, possibly fatal ways. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a morbid curiosity was blooming. What did intensely intimate with an alien commander feel like? And could he possibly survive it? The answer to the second question felt far less certain than the first. The preparations were thorough, bordering on invasive. Elias was subjected to resonant frequency scans, biosignature analysis, and a series of cleansing rituals that involved pulsating light and humming vibrations that seemed to probe his very bones. He was given a simple, flowing garment woven from the same bioluminescent material as the structures, told it would aid in resonance conductivity. His questions were met with Lyra's formal, precise explanations, offering information but no comfort. He learned that the Obsidian Hand weren't just a rival bloodline. They were extremists who believed the Cathar pulse was being weakened by external influences and diluted by inter-bloodline mixing. They sought to seize control of the pulse and purge it, starting with those they deemed impure, including the young princess, whose lineage had recently bonded with a previously isolated clan. His accidental saving of her had disrupted their timing. His entanglement now made him a potential weapon or a necessary sacrifice in their eyes. Lyra trained him in maintaining a steady heart rate, a calm mind, and a focus on a single stable thought, a practice utterly alien to Elias's default state of sarcastic chaos. "Your mental activity is like a swarm of agitated gnats, Elder Vance," she told him, her voice flat with exasperation during one session. "The pulse is a vast, interconnected ocean. Your current state will cause a localized storm." "Yeah, well, my brain's kind of wired for storms, Commander," Elias retorted, trying to clear his head and failing. "Comes with the territory of getting shot at and patching up guys who got shot at. Hard to turn off." "You must," she insisted, her tone hardening. "During the ritual, your mind must be a quiet pool, ready to accept and harmonize with my own. Any internal resistance or uncontrolled fluctuation could shatter the connection." Despite her clinical demeanor, Elias saw flashes of something else, a weariness in the way she sometimes held herself when she thought he wasn't looking. A subtle dimming of her carapace's glow when the topic of her former pair came up, even if she quickly shut down that line of conversation. He started asking her about her life, her duties, the Cathar world beyond the deep structure. She answered factually, revealing intricate details about their migratory patterns, their reliance on the pulse for navigation and historical knowledge, their long conflict with the Obsidian Hand. He learned that the pulse wasn't just a library. It was a constant, subtle presence, a background hum of collective life and experience. Being untethered meant a Cathar felt that hum less strongly, a dull ache where vibrant connection should be. It was a state of deep isolation, accepted only by those like Lyra, whose duty required emotional distance. "So you've been living with that dull ache?" Elias asked, genuinely curious. "It is merely a state of being," Lyra replied, deflecting the emotional implication. "It facilitates strategic clarity, allows for difficult decisions without the impedance of resonant empathy." "Impedance of resonant empathy," Elias repeated, shaking his head. "Man, you guys really have a different way of looking at things. We call that compassion, or just not being a total jerk." A faint, almost imperceptible ripple crossed Lyra's carapace. It was the closest thing he'd seen to an emotional reaction. Compassion, as you define it, can blur judgment. Duty requires clarity. As the cycles counted down, the tension between them grew, a subtle current beneath the surface of their formal interactions. They spent long hours in proximity, practicing resonance exercises, enduring the cleansing rituals, Elias learning the shape of Lyra's presence in the unfamiliar landscape of his own resonant field. He started to recognize the distinct frequency of her, strong and steady, bordering his own more erratic signal. He also began to notice the small, almost imperceptible tells, the minute shift in her carapace's pattern when she was focused, the way her multi-jointed limbs steadily adjusted when she was calculating. He found himself watching her, fascinated by her alien grace and the mystery of the being beneath the commander's exterior. And Lyra, despite her best efforts at detachment, found her own resonance disturbed by the outsider. His chaotic frequency was indeed difficult to regulate, but it was also vibrant, unexpectedly warm. His dry humor, while often landing wide of the mark, sometimes struck her with an odd, unfamiliar sensation that she couldn't easily dismiss. His simple, direct questions cut through her carefully constructed walls. He had saved the princess out of sheer, uncalculated impulse, a concept so foreign to Cathar protocol that it was bewildering. And his empathy, while labeled impedance, felt less like a hindrance and more like delight in the darkness of her own untethered state. She felt his residual grief, a quiet sorrow that echoed her own buried loss, though she would never admit it. The protocol mandated integration, not mutual understanding. But understanding was happening anyway, in the long silences and shared focus before the inevitable. The day of the ritual arrived. Elias was escorted to the Chamber of Whispering Stone, a vast cavern where ancient crystalline formations pulsed with soft light, carrying the faint ethereal echoes of the pulse. At the center was a circular platform with two depressions, inlaid with resonant filaments. Lyra was already there, her carapace glowing with a heightened intensity. She wore no armor, only the same flowing garment as Elias. Around the platform stood the queen and other Cathar, including the dark forms of the obsidian hand, their presence a palpable pressure. Lyra gestured towards the platform. We will lie here. The filaments will connect our physical forms to the chamber's resonance matrix, and to each other. Maintain stillness. Focus your mind. A quiet pool. Elias nodded, his mouth dry. He lay down in one depression, the filaments cool and slightly yielding against his skin. Lyra lay opposite him, her form aligning perfectly with the other depression. As the queen began a low, resonant chant that vibrated through the chamber, faint tendrils of light began to emanate from the filaments, attaching themselves to specific points on their bodies. Elias's wrists, neck, and forehead, Lyra's corresponding carapace note. A low hum filled the air, intensifying. Lyra's mental voice reached him, clear and strong despite the growing energy. Ready yourself, Elder Vance. The merging begins. A jolt of pure energy surged through Elias as the connection solidified. It wasn't painful, but overwhelming. His individual thoughts fractured, dissolving into a vast current. He felt Lyra's presence, strong and steady, a lighthouse in a stormy sea of sensation. He felt the echoes of the pulse, not individual thoughts, but a vast river of sensation, memory, and being. It was Yuma. His chaotic human mind flared in panic, a localized storm within the ocean. Lyra's presence tightened around his, a sharp, mental command. Stillness. Let my resonance guide yours. He focused on her, on that steady, violet frequency. He clung to it, letting it anchor him. And then another sensation layered itself over the resonant flood, intense physical intimacy. The joining of the conductive points wasn't just energetic. It was deeply, fundamentally physical. A wave of heat, of pressure, of alien sensation washed over him. It was raw, powerful, and intrinsically tied to the resonant merging. He felt his body respond, an instinctive, primal reaction to the sheer intensity of the connection. It wasn't just two minds touching the pulse. It was two beings, fundamentally different, merging on every conceivable level, energetic, mental, and physical. Lyra's internal presence shifted. The cold control wavered, replaced by a surge of something akin to shock, then a fierce, almost desperate focus. His human response, chaotic and primal, was resonating through the merging field, adding an unexpected variable to the ritual. It wasn't just about him harmonizing with her. It was about their combined frequency finding harmony. And his raw, unbidden physical reaction was amplifying the resonant connection in ways the protocols hadn't anticipated. Through the haze of sensation, Elias felt a sudden, sharp influx of Lyra's self. Not just her steady resonance, but fragments of memory, echoes of emotion she usually kept locked away. The chilling void of her untethered state, the searing pain of losing her pair, a grief so deep it felt like a physical wound in her being. The weight of her duty, a crushing burden she carried alone. It was overwhelming, heartbreaking. And through it all, he felt the fierce strength of her will, her determination to protect her people, to see this through. His own resonance, anchored to hers, responded not with fear, but with a surge of something unexpected. Not just the practiced stillness, but the messy, chaotic, intensely human empathy he'd tried to suppress. I see you. His resonant signal seemed to broadcast, not in words, but pure feeling. I see your pain. You're not alone. Lyra's response was immediate and visceral. Her mental presence flared, a mix of shock and raw. unbidden emotion. The ritual chamber seemed to pulse with the intensity of their combined unexpectedly volatile resonant field. The obsidian hand cathars surrounding the platform shifted nervously, their carapaces pulsing with agitation. This was not the sterile, controlled integration the protocol intended. This was something else entirely, something alive and potentially dangerous. The merging reached its peak, a blinding flash of internal light and sensation. Then slowly, the intensity began to recede, leaving Elias trembling, anchored only by Lyra's steady presence beside him. As the resonant field subsided, Elias lay there, breathing heavily, the filaments detaching with soft pops of energy. The physical intimacy, woven into the resonant merging, faded into a lingering awareness of Lyra's form beside him, a connection that felt deeper than skin. He felt different, lighter, somehow less fractured. And he felt Lyra. Her presence was no longer just a distinct signal. It was woven into the fabric of his own being, a constant, subtle undertone. And he knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic, that she felt him too. His messy, empathetic humanity was now irrevocably part of her. Lyra pushed herself up, her movements stiff, her carapace still pulsing with residual energy. She did not look at Elias. The queen approached the platform, her golden carapace radiating a mix of relief and profound unease. "The integration is complete," she announced, her voice resonating through the silent chamber. "The outsider's resonance is bound." She glanced at the obsidian hand, who pulsed with rarely contained fury. He is no longer a threat to the pulse. He is integrated. The dark carapaced cadar scraped forward. "Integrated, Your Majesty, but not harmonically." The surge of raw empathy from the outsider's signature, amplified by the commander's resonant shock, that was disruptive, potentially volatile. "This bond is unstable." "The bond holds," Lyra stated, her voice flat, finally turning to face the queen. Her internal glow seemed dimmer, her posture still rigidly controlled. But Elias, now connected to her in a way he couldn't articulate, felt the turmoil beneath the surface. "His resonance is bound to mine. He is now untethered no longer. And I carry his frequency." "You are now bound, Commander," the queen confirmed, her gaze sharp. "To him and to the protocol. Your duties shift. Your focus is now bilateral. Your priority is maintaining the stability of this unexpected bond. You are now Pair Commander Lyra, custodian of the integrated resonance." The obsidian hand protested. "But Your Majesty, an outsider, bound to a commander, to a member of the guard? This is an affront. It violates the purity of the pulse. His very nature is chaotic. Chaos cannot be purged if it is integrated," the queen said, her voice firm, cutting through the protest. "It must be understood, harmonized. Lyra and her pair will now be sequestered until the stability of the bond is assured and its effects on the pulse can be fully assessed. This is not a simple pairing. It is an unprecedented integration. A test. The fate of the protocol, and perhaps the pulse itself, rests on their ability to achieve true harmony." As they were led away from the chamber of whispering stone, the air heavy with tension and unspoken conflict, Elias glanced at Lyra. Her face was unreadable, her carapace a steady, deep violet once more, but he felt the residual echoes of her pain, her duty, her shock intertwined with his own bewildered exhaustion, and the strange new awareness of her presence within him. He was bound to an alien commander who felt like both a stranger and someone he suddenly knew on a level deeper than thought. His reward for saving a princess was a life-or-death marriage, and the potential to either save or shatter an entire alien civilization's consciousness. They were taken to a private suite within the deep structures, far from the main thoroughfares. The chamber was spacious, softly lit, and contained only sparse, functional furnishings. Designed for a bonded pair, Elias realized with a jolt. For them. As the door sealed behind them, the silence stretched, broken only by the soft hum of the structures and the faint, constant presence of Lyra in his mind. Lyra finally turned to him, her expression guarded. "The ritual is complete. We are bound." "Elder Vance." "Elias," he said. Name feeling strange and vulnerable now that he was part of something so much larger and more alien. Just Elias. I guess we're in this together now, like it or not. Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze distant. Like it or not, she echoed, the phrase carrying a surprising weight. The bond, it is more potent than the protocols predicted, due to your unique resonance and the circumstances. She paused, then added in a low voice, I felt your empathy during the merge. It was disruptive. Disruptive. Elias managed a weak smile. Yeah, that's pretty much my middle name. Sorry if I messed up your perfect ritual, Commander. Or pair commander, I guess I should call you now. A flicker of something akin to amusement crossed Lyra's carapace. Gone before he could be sure. Lyra, she said, you are bound to me. Formality between pairs is unnecessary and counterproductive to harmony. She moved to a low platform that served as a sleeping surface, sitting with deliberate grace. The bond requires proximity and let the resonant exchange to stabilize, to harmonize. She met his gaze, and this time he saw a raw vulnerability in her alien form, a crack in the commander's facade. I felt your pain, alien, your grief. It resonated with my own. It was unexpected. Elias sat on the edge of the platform, suddenly acutely aware of their solitude, the forced intimacy of their situation. Yeah, well, we all got baggage, right? Even space commanders. He hesitated, then asked softly, your pair, how did they die? Lyra was silent for a long time. The air felt thick with her held grief, a palpable weight in the space between them. Finally, she shewed, her mental voice barely a whisper. They were taken by the obsidian hand during a border patrol. Their resonance was extinguished. Violently, I felt it through our bond. It shattered me. The controlled facade cracked further, and Elias felt a wave of pure, unadulterated sorrow wash over him through their newly formed connection. It was overwhelming, mirroring his own buried trauma, the faces of the men he couldn't save, flashing in his mind. Damn, he breathed, the single word inadequate. He reached out a hand, an instinctive human gesture of comfort, then hesitated, unsure if physical touch was appropriate or even understood. Lyra seemed to sense his hesitation. Her multi-jointed hand, cool and smooth, reached out and covered his, linking their conductive points once more. Gently this time, the subtle resonance flowed between them. Not the overwhelming flood of the ritual, but a quiet, steady current. Your touch, it carries your resonance, she murmured. It is different. Warm. Yeah, well, humans are kinda warm-blooded, Elias said, trying for lightness, but his voice was rough with emotion. Figured you'd notice. He held her hand, feeling the alien texture, the subtle vibrations of her life force. In that moment, surrounded by the strange, glowing walls of their forced sanctuary, they were just two beings, wounded by loss, bound by a twist of fate, and an unprecedented connection. The weight of the Ketherapulse, the threat of the obsidian hand, the absurdity of their marriage, it all faded before the simple, profound reality of their shared vulnerability. The bond was more than ritual. It was a conduit for everything they had tried to hide, and they were only just beginning to discover what that meant. Days blurred into cycles within the sequestered suite. Elias and Lyra navigated their new reality, a forced proximity that became, slowly, something else. They ate together, Elias adapting to nutrient pastes that tasted vaguely of metallic earth, Lyra observing his reactions with faint, alien curiosity. They spoke for hours, Elias sharing stories of Earth, of his life as a medic, of the strange, often brutal beauty of human existence. Lyra listened, absorbing his words, her understanding of his chaotic nature deepening. She in turn continued to teach him about the Cathar, their ancient history encoded in the pulse, their intricate social structures, the sacred duty of the bonded pair. She revealed more about the obsidian hand, their growing power, their insidious influence within the deeper levels of the Cathar structures. The physical aspect of their bond was a constant, subtle presence. Through their shared resonance, Elias became hyper-aware of Lyra's proximity, feeling the ebb and flow of her internal state, her moments of tension or rare relaxation. Lying on their shared platform, he felt the quiet hum of her life, a comforting rhythm in the alien silence. Physical touch, initially awkward, became a natural extension of their resonant connection. Holding hands, a casual brush of their forms, these small contacts sent ripples through their bond, a confirmation of their shared presence. The conductive points felt less like ritual nodes and more like sensitive zones, alive with the potential for connection. One cycle after a particularly tense discussion about the obsidian hand's tactics, Elias felt a wave of Lyra's fear and frustration ripple through their bond. It was raw, unfiltered, a stark contrast to her usual composure. Without thinking, he reached out, pulling her close. Her multi-jointed form was surprisingly light against him. Her carapace cool and smooth. He held her, a simple, human embrace. Lyra stiffened initially, unused to such direct physical comfort. Then, slowly, tentatively, she relaxed against him, her carapace pulsing with a faint, unfamiliar warmth. Elias felt her mental presence soften, the sharp edges of her fear blurring into a weary sorrow. This physical contact, she murmured, her voice quiet. It is different from the resonant merging. It is grounded. Ja, Elias said, his voice rough. It's just holding someone, letting them know they're not alone. He felt a deep sense of protectiveness rise in him, surprising in its intensity. This alien commander, so formal and disciplined, was also deeply vulnerable, burdened by duty and grief. And now, he was her anchor. Not alone, Lyra repeated, the concept seeming to resonate with her deeply. She shifted, adjusting her form until she was more comfortable in his arms. Elias felt her carapace pulse against his skin, a soft, rhythmic glow. He realized with a jolt that this was intimacy, perhaps deeper than any he'd known before. Not just physical or emotional, but resonant, a merging of souls mediated by alien biology and a twist of fate. Their forced sequestration couldn't last forever. News filtered in from the outside world of escalating tensions. The obsidian hand, frustrated by the failure of their abduction and the unprecedented integration, were stirring up unrest, claiming the Queen had compromised the purity of the pulse by allowing an outsider to be bound. They demanded a public test of harmony, a ritual combat where Elias and Lyra would have to prove the strength and stability of their bond against a champion of the obsidian hand. Failure would mean not just their own destruction, but likely civil war. Lyra received the message from the Queen, her carapace darkening with grim resolve. The obsidian hand have invoked the challenge of resonant strength, she informed Elias, her voice tight. It is a brutal, ancient ritual. We must face their champion in the arena. Our physical prowess matters, but it is the harmony of our combined resonance that will be tested. If our bond shatters under duress, the pulse will recoil, and we will be undone. Elias felt a cold knot form in his stomach. An arena? Ritual combat? This was getting crazier by the minute. So, basically, we have to fight together, while telepathically holding hands, or we explode. Essentially, Lyra confirmed, her mental presence radiating a tense focus. The champion will seek to disrupt our resonance through targeted attacks, both physical and energetic. They will exploit any disharmony within our bond. We must move as one, think as one, resonate as one. The challenge felt insurmountable. How could they, two beings so fundamentally different, with a bond formed under duress and barely understood, achieve the level of harmony required to face a trained Cathar champion? The pressure was immense. Failure meant not just their deaths, but chaos for the Cathar world he had accidentally stumbled into. The dry humor felt thin and inadequate now. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving the impossible. And as he looked at Lyra, saw the weight of duty and fear in her posture, Elias knew he wouldn't face this alone. They were bound for better or worse. The time for isolation was over. The time for fighting together had come. Training for the challenge of resonant strength was unlike anything Elias had ever experienced. Lyra, the cold tactician, became his relentless instructor. They practiced combat forms, Elias's human agility and combat training adapted to working alongside Lyra's multi-limb strength and speed. But the physical training was only a fraction of it. The core was the resonant harmony. They spent hours in a small training chamber, lights dimmed, focusing on their shared resonance. Lyra guided him, teaching him to anticipate her movements through their bond, to feel her intent before she acted, to synchronize his own chaotic energy with her steady flow. It was frustrating, intimate work. Their separate resonances clashed, grated then, in rare moments, flowed together with startling ease. Elias felt Lyra's frustration when he failed, a sharp spike in their connection. He felt her focused determination, a comforting strength he could lean into. And Lyra felt Elias's chaotic bursts of improvisation, his sometimes clumsy but effective physical responses, and the steady undercurrent of human resilience and something she was beginning to recognize as fierce, protective loyalty. Your resonance is like a river, Elias, Lyra explained one cycle. After a particularly difficult session, mine is a deep well. We must learn to let the river flow into the well without causing turbulence. Right, Elias muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. So I gotta turn off the rapids and just puddle. You must learn control, Lyra corrected, her voice firm. Not suppression. Your unique frequency adds potential strength to our bond, but only if it is integrated harmoniously. She looked at him, her gaze direct. The obsidian hand champion, Jukar, is master of resonant disruption. He will seek out weaknesses. Any discord within our bond will be amplified. Doubt, fear, anger, they are poisons. They know pressure then, Elias said, but the humor felt hollow. He was afraid of failing her, failing the queen, failing this strange alien culture that had unexpectedly claimed him, afraid of the finality of non-viability. One evening, after a grueling training session, they were back in their sequestered suite. The silence was heavy with unspoken fears. Elias felt Lyra's tension through their bond, a taut string stretched almost to breaking point. He reached out, taking her hand, linking their conductive points. Hey, he said softly, we'll figure this out. We're bound now, right? We're in this together. Lyra's carapace pulsed softly. In this together, she echoed. She looked at their joined hands, at the faint light flowing between their different forms. I did not anticipate this, Elias. When the protocol was invoked, I expected a duty, a burden. I did not expect. Expect what, Lyra? He prompted gently. She hesitated, then met his gaze. Her internal glow seemed to soften, revealing a depth of emotion she rarely showed. To feel this connection, to feel your presence within me as something not disruptive, grounding. To feel your empathy as a counterpoint to my own emptiness. She paused, then her voice dropped to a low hum. My pair, when they were taken. I felt their final moments through our bond. It was pure terror then. Silence. A void. My own resonance became untethered, disconnected from the vibrant flow of the pulse. It was like dying slowly, while still living.
Elias squeezed her hand. I'm so sorry, Lyra.
He remembered the quiet ache she had spoken of, the state of being untethered. He understood now. It wasn't just emotional distance. It was a form of living death for a Cathar. Your resonance, she continued, her voice barely audible. It fills that void, Elias. It is chaotic, yes, but also warm, alive. It does not replace what was lost, but it creates something new, something unexpected. She looked at him, her gaze holding a depth of alien emotion he was only beginning to comprehend. Perhaps our integration is not merely a burden. Perhaps it is a form of healing for both of us. The confession hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Healing. The wounded healer, bound to the grieving tactician. It wasn't just a strange twist of fate anymore. It felt like destiny, absurd and terrifyingly real. The day of the challenge dawned. The air in the subterranean city, thick with anticipation. Elias and Lyra were led to a vast, domed arena carved from gleaming black stone. Spectators, hundreds of Cathar of various bloodlines, filled the tiered platforms surrounding the central ring. The obsidian hand were a dark mass on one side, their carapaces pulsing with aggressive energy. The queen was present, observing from a high perch, and facing them in the arena was Jukar, the obsidian hand champion. His carapace was jagged and black, radiating a palpable aura of hostility and resonant disruption. Two Cathar guards, clad in ceremonial armor, stood at the edge of the ring, bearing ritual weapons, long crystalline blades that hummed with contained energy. These are weapons of resonant striking, Lyra's voice echoed in Elias's mind. Calm despite the tension, they amplify the wielder's resonant intent. Jakar will use his to disrupt our bond. We must use ours to defend and strike as one. They were handed the blades. Elias felt the strange alien weapon vibrate in his hand, responding to his touch, to the subtle resonance flowing between him and Lyra. It felt heavy, but also alive. The Queen's voice, amplified through the arena, boomed through the space. Before the challenge begins, the bond must be ritually confirmed. Pair Commander Lyra. Elder Elias Vance. Approach the Nexus Stone. At the center of the ring stood a massive, dark stone that pulsed with faint internal light. Lyra led Elias towards it. As they stood before it, the Queen continued. Place your joined hands upon the stone. Let the pulse witness your connection. Show your harmony. Elias and Lyra clasped hands, linking their conductive points, and placed their joined hands flat against the smooth, cool surface of the Nexus Stone. A surge of energy flowed through them, stronger than in the sequestered suite, connected now to the vast, deep resonance of the Cathar homeworld. Through their bond, Elias felt the myriad echoes of the pulse, ancient memories, collective emotions, the hum of countless lives. It was overwhelming, but Lyra's presence, strong and steady beside him, anchored him. And then a new sensation. A subtle pattern of light began to appear on the back of their joined hands, radiating outwards from the point of contact. On Elias's skin, it manifested as intricate, glowing lines that mirrored the patterns on Lyra's carapace, flowing across his knuckles and wrist. On Lyra's carapace, it was a complementary pattern, a deeper, more vibrant glow that settled into the violet surface. A bond mark, visible, tangible proof of their connection. The Queen's voice was solemn. The bond mark is laid. The pulse recognizes your pairing. Now, prove your harmony. The challenge begins. The air crackled with energy. Jakar advanced, his ritual blade humming with malevolent intent. His mental presence was a discordant shriek, a deliberate attempt to shatter their focus. Elias flinched, but Lyra's presence tightened around his, shielding him. Focus. Elias, trust the bond. Feel my intent. Jakar struck, a blur of motion, his blade aimed not just at their bodies, but at the space between them. A resonant strike meant to sever their connection. Lyra moved instinctively, blocking the blow with her blade, and Elias, feeling her intent through their bond, mirrored her movement, the unfamiliar weapon feeling strangely natural in his hand. Their blades met Jakar's with a resonant clang that sent shivers down Elias's spine. The fight was a blur of motion, energy, and resonant chaos. Jakar attacked relentlessly, his every move designed to exploit their differences, to create discord in their bond. He lashed out with physical strikes, forcing them to defend together, their movements needing to be perfectly synchronized. He unleashed blasts of resonant energy, waves of psychic static aimed at shattering their concentration. They fought as one, Lyra's strategic brilliance and Cathar combat skills, fused with Elias's quick reflexes, improvisational tactics, and surprising resilience. He felt her anticipation, her feints, her openings through their bond, and he reacted instantly, a seamless extension of her will. Lyra, in turn, felt his bursts of chaotic energy, his protective instincts, his refusal to yield, his human empathy, which the obsidian hand had deemed a weakness, became a source of unexpected strength, a raw, vibrant counterpoint to Jakar's sterile hostility. Jakar saw it, felt the strange harmony of their combined resonance. His attacks grew more desperate, more vicious. He managed a strike that sent a shockwave through Elias's leg, the old injury flaring with intense pain. Elias staggered, his focus wavering. Discord rippled through their bond. Jakar surged forward, aiming a killing blow at the vulnerable point in their connection. Lyra's mental cry was sharp with alarm and raw fear. Pain lancing through him, Elias focused on that fear, on Lyra's presence, on the feeling of her hand in his, the bond mark glowing on his skin. He focused on her grief, on his own, on the shared vulnerability that bound them. He didn't fight the chaos. He embraced it, channeling the raw energy of his pain and fear and loyalty into their shared resonance. Their combined resonance surged, not with sterile harmony, but with a fierce, raw power, a blend of alien discipline and human grit. Lyra moved, anticipating his chaotic surge, amplifying it through her own steady frequency. Together they parried Jakar's strike, their blades meeting his with a force that sent the obsidian hand champion staggering back. Then, acting on pure instinct, a shared impulse that flashed between them through the bond, they counterattacked. Lyra feinted left, drawing Jakar's attention, while Elias, guided by her resonant pulse, surged right, channeling the energy of their bond into his ritual blade. He struck, not with precision, but with the desperate force of a survivalist, aiming for a gap in Jakar's defense. Lyra had opened. The crystalline blade connected, not just with Jakar's carapace, but with his resonant core. A blinding flash of light erupted, a wave of pure energy that threw Elias and Lyra back, leaving a smoking crater where Jakar had stood. Silence descended on the arena. The obsidian hand Cathar pulsed with fury and disbelief. The queen and her court remained still, their carapaces glowing with awe and uncertainty. Elias lay on the ground, bruised and shaken, but alive. Lyra was beside him, already pushing herself up, her carapace radiating exhaustion, but also a fierce triumph. She looked at him, and for the first time, Elias saw not just the commander, but the being who had shared her deepest pain with him, who was now inextricably linked to his own messy existence. The queen's voice finally broke the silence. The challenge is met. The harmony is unorthodox, but the bond holds. The outsider and his pair have prevailed. The obsidian hand erupted in angry roars. Impossible. Unclean. This bond is a perversion. Lyra rose to her full height, her ritual blade still in hand. Her carapace pulsed with resonant power, amplified by their shared victory. Her mental voice, strong and clear, projected throughout the arena, silencing the dissent. The bond is forged by protocol and defended by strength. Our harmony is not found in sterile sameness, but in the joining of differences. The outsider's resonance did not shatter the pulse. It added a new frequency, one that prevailed against the forces of disruption. She turned to Elias, extending a hand. He is not a contaminant. He is my pair, and together, we are bound to the Cathar. Elias took her hand, the glowing bond mark, a searing confirmation. He pulled himself up, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. Two disparate beings united against a common enemy. Their unlikely bond, the very weapon that had saved them. The obsidian hand's challenge had been defeated, but the fight for acceptance, for true harmony, was only just beginning. The queen had said their pairing was a test. They had passed the first brutal phase. Now came the test of integrating their strange, powerful bond into the fabric of Cathar society. Elias, the human medic who stumbled into an alien world, had not just saved a princess, he had become something far more. And his reward was a future intertwined with the fate of a culture, bound to an alien woman he was only just beginning to know, but already felt with a depth that transcended language. The victory in the arena didn't end the conflict, but it shifted the ground. The obsidian hand were discredited, their claim that Elias's resonance was inherently disruptive proven false by the successful defense and the unique power of the combined bond. However, their resentment remained, and the Cathar society, steeped in ancient traditions and wary of change, struggled to accept this unprecedented pairing. Elias, the outsider, was now visible, irrevocably linked to a high-ranking member of the Guard, a custodian of the pulse. Elias and Lyra returned to their sequestered suite, the tension of the battle replaced by a quiet exhaustion, the shared intensity of the fight, the absolute reliance on their bond, had deepened their connection profoundly. There was no awkwardness now. The physical intimacy that had been part of the ritual felt natural, a part of the resonant flow between them. That night, in the quiet solitude of their chambers, they came together not out of ritual obligation, but out of a shared need for solace and connection. The joining of conductive points, the resonant merging, was different this time. It was slower, infused with the vulnerability they had shown each other, the fear they had overcome together, the triumph they had shared. Elias felt the intricate landscape of Lyra's being, her strength and her fragility intertwined. He shared his own messy human emotions, his fear for her, his protectiveness, the strange burgeoning feeling of belonging he felt with her. It was an intimacy of mind, body, and soul, a resonant dance unique to their bond. Through the merging, Elias felt Lyra's walls finally crumble. The disciplined tactician, the grieving pair, the untethered Cathar, all were present, raw and open. She allowed him to see the depth of her love for her lost pair, the scar it had left, and how his presence, his chaotic, warm resonance, was slowly, gently knitting her fractured soul back together. And Lyra felt Elias's old wounds, the weight of his past failures, the persistent ache of injury, and the deep well of empathy that drove him. Their shared trauma became a foundation, their differences a source of strength. Afterward, lying close, their bond marks glowing softly, Elias felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He was a long way from home, in an alien world, bound to an alien woman facing uncertain future. But he wasn't alone. "We won," he whispered, his voice rough. "We survived," Lyra corrected softly, her mental presence warm against his. "And in doing so, we proved the strength of our bond. It may not be the harmony they expected, but it is effective." "Effective," Elias chuckled softly. "Yeah, I guess you could call nearly exploding effective." He reached out and traced the glowing lines on his hand, the alien mark of their bond. "So, what happens now, Lyra? What's integrated life look like for a human and a Cathar commander?" Lyra shifted, her form settling closer. "The Queen must now formally acknowledge our status. We are a recognized pair. My duties will adapt to our shared nature. You will no longer be confined, but your presence within the deep structures will be managed, monitored. The obsidian hand will not cease their opposition easily, but they have been dealt a significant blow. For now there is adjustment. For all of us, life post-challenge was a strange blend of the mundane and the extraordinary. Elias remained in their suite, but now received a steady stream of Cathar visitors, scholars eager to study his unique resonance, diplomats seeking to understand the implications of their bond, members of the Queen's court cautiously welcoming the victorious pair. Lyra resumed some of her duties, but always within a range that allowed their bond to remain connected. They navigated the complex social landscape together, Lyra translating cultural nuances, Elias inevitably missed. Elias offering his direct, sometimes awkwardly humorous, human perspective. The pulse, accessed through their bond, became a constant source of wonder and challenge for Elias. It was a vast, living history, a symphony of consciousness that was beautiful and overwhelming. Lyra guided him, teaching him to filter the flood of information, to focus on specific echoes, specific memories. He learned about the Cathar's ancient migrations, their reverence for the deep structures, the cyclical nature of their existence. He also felt the underlying anxieties, the collective fear of the obsidian hand's growing influence, the subtle currents of unrest. Their bond wasn't just a connection, it was a unique perspective on the Cathar world. Through Lyra, Elias saw the world through alien eyes, felt the weight of ancient traditions and collective duty. Through Elias, Lyra experienced the world with a raw, emotional immediacy she had long suppressed. They were two halves of a whole, their combined resonance creating something entirely new. The final ritual was simple, yet profound. In the Queen's chamber, before a gathering of the court, Lyra and Elias stood before the Nexus Stone once more. The Queen spoke of their unlikely journey, of the protocol of integration, of the unexpected harmony they had forged. She acknowledged the challenges ahead, the resistance from the obsidian hand, the need for Cathar society to adapt. Then she turned to them. "Pair Commander Lyra, Elder Elias Van, you have been bound by protocol and proven by strength. The pulse recognizes you. Rise as a united resonance, bound to the Cathar, custodians of harmony." As the Queen spoke the final words, the bond marks on their hands flared with bright light, a visible affirmation of their status. Elias felt a wave of acceptance flow through the pulse, a softening of the collective consciousness towards him. He was no longer just the outsider. He was Elias Vance, bound pair of Commander Lyra, part of the Cathar. He looked at Lyra, standing tall and proud beside him, her carapace glowing with quiet strength, the bond mark on her hand mirrored by his own. Her gaze met his, and in her alien form he saw a depth of affection and commitment that mirrored his own. They had started as strangers, thrust together by accident and alien law. They had faced death, navigated cultural divides, and found solace and strength in each other's arms and mans. Their future was uncertain. The obsidian hands still posed a threat. Integrating a human into the core of Cathar society wouldn't be easy, but they would face it together, bound by ritual, forged by fire, and united by a love that transcended species and stars. Elias Vance had saved an alien princess, and his reward was a life he could never have imagined, bound to the woman who had shown him that even in the deepest darkness, harmony could be found, and healing was possible. Hand in alien hand, the ancient Cathar pulse gained a new, chaotic but vital frequency, resonating with the heartbeat of a single human man, irrevocably woven into the tapestry of their collective soul.